Friends, today I am starting new topic, that is disciplinary proceedings in departmental matter. As the name itself suggests, disciplinary proceedings means if anything which is not as per conduct rule is done by a government employee, then disciplinary proceedings entails. Conduct rule is a separate code wherein various type of misconducts are defined, elaborated. I have worked in customs department for 25 years. I have also worked in Vigilance Directorate of Custom and Excise, Western Unit, Mumbai. I have dealt with various matters, though it is a separate story that because of those matters, the officers of the department, that is Vigilance Directorate, got annoyed with me and somehow they managed to dig out something for which they put me under cloud for about 5 years. And when I applied for voluntary retirement, they stopped my voluntary retirement and then they issued a charge sheet in July 2010, the order on which has not been issued so far. So, having faced the disciplinary proceedings myself, having worked in Vigilance Directorate, I feel that I would be in a better position to explain you various aspects of disciplinary proceedings. Now, how disciplinary proceedings starts? In a department, while functioning or performing duty, there are certain pitfalls which a human being commit deliberately or does not have intention to commit, but it happens. For example, if a government employee is supposed to attend duty at 9:30 a.m. in the morning and he comes at 10 a.m., then the supervisory authority may ignore it or issue a memorandum calling upon him to explain why that employee has come late. Similarly, if a complaint is received wherein it is mentioned that a particular employee has violated certain rules of conduct rule, then also disciplinary proceedings. Now, in case of memorandum which has been issued for late coming, after explanation is submitted, supervisory authority issues a warning to be careful in future. But in case of complaint against the employee of misconduct, an inquiry is conducted first whether prima facie there is some substance in the complaint or not. If it is found that there is some substance in the complaint and a vigilance angle exists, only then investigation starts. Now, during investigation, the officer who is interested with that investigation gather, collect the material, record statements of various persons, including complainant and the officer concerned. It is very important to record the statement of the employee who is affected by the complaint, as that is the only opportunity he gets to explain as to how there is no misconduct and whether that complaint is engineered or vexatious or merely to harass the concerned employee. After the investigation is complete, investigation report is submitted to the disciplinary authority, and if he agrees with the investigation, then a charge sheet is issued. In case of Group B, the inquiry report along with the material and evidences, statement, etc., forwarded to the Vigilance Directorate of the concerned department for issuance of first stage advice. Once first stage advice is received, then a charge sheet is prepared, and the charge sheet along with first stage advice is issued to the concerned employee, asking for explanation or written submission within 15 days of the receipt of the. After receipt of the charge sheet, the employee submits his explanation, representation. Now, here it is very pertinent to mention that once a charge sheet is issued, whatever explanation an employee submit, the disciplinary authority who has issued charge sheet does not accept it. It is practical thing I am putting before you. Once the charge sheet is issued means the concerned employee has to face the penalty, which are mentioned in Rule 11 of CCSCCA Rule 1965. Now, once the charge sheet is issued for the penalties mentioned in Rule 11 of CCSCCA Rule, the disciplinary authority issued an inquiry proceedings, wherein an inquiry authority is appointed, a presenting officer is appointed who is representing the disciplinary authority, The appointment order of both these are intimated to the charge officer. The inquiry officer conduct a preliminary inquiry, which is again for namesake. He calls the concerned employee in presence of him. He scrutinizes the evidences, and then he fixes date for regular inquiry. During inquiry, presenting officer present the departmental case. Thereafter, he, if any witness are mentioned in the charge sheet, calls them and their deposition is recorded. Charge officer, if he opts to attend the inquiry, then he attends the inquiry and a daily sheet is issued to him. In case the charge officer does not want to attend the inquiry, he may do so, but he is at liberty to attend or join the inquiry at any moment during the inquiry proceedings. Once the deposition of the witnesses are over, the charge officer has got chance to present his case. He may cross the witnesses presented by presenting officer. He may also present his own defense witnesses, which are in turn would be crossed by the presenting officer. After the inquiry is concluded, the presenting officer prepares his written brief and submit it to the inquiry officer. The inquiry authority in turn forward that presenting officer brief to the charge officer to submit his say on the presenting officer's brief. Once the brief of the presenting officer is submitted to the charge officer, he has to go through the brief minutely and scrutinize it, because at times it is seen that presenting officer does not apply his mind and reproduces whatever is fact is mentioned in the charge sheet. He does not evaluate the evidences properly. Now, why presenting officer does that? It is because presenting officer is departmental advocate. I have seen many cases where presenting officer, if does not prove the charges, then he himself faces discipline. So the role of the charge officers is very crucial in scrutinizing the presenting officer bureau. If presenting officer brief is not given or handed over to the charge officer, then the inquiry is vitiated. Once the charge officer submits his written submission on presenting officer brief to the authority, inquiry officer has to evaluate the brief of the presenting officer vis-a-vis the written submission of the charge officer and then write his inquiry report, mentioning therein which charge is proved and which charge is not proved. Here it is very important to mention that disciplinary proceedings in departmental matter is based on preponderance of probability. So it is not watertight case as in criminal cases that benefit of doubt is extended to the charge officer. Even one evidence is enough to arrive at that the charge officer has the charge employee has committed misconduct. After inquiry report is submitted, the disciplinary authority forms its tentative view, and if he agrees with the inquiry report, then the inquiry report along with tentative view has to be supplied to the employees or charge officer. It is common practice that the tentative view of the disciplinary authority is not supplied or not furnished to the charge employee, and merely inquiry report is submitted asking for written submission. If disciplinary authority disagrees with inquiry report, then also tentative view of disagreement along with inquiry report is submitted, furnished to the charge employee for his written petition. After receipt of the inquiry report along with tentative view, the charge employee submits his representation to the disputed authority. After receipt of the representation of the employee, the disciplinary authority ought to provide opportunity for personal hearing to the charge employee. After personal hearing is over, the disciplinary authority applies his mind and passes an order which may be exonerating the officer out of the charge mentioned in the charge sheet or implicating him in the charges. Normal practice is that no disciplinary authority has ever dropped the charges against the employee until unless there are some compelling circumstances which I don't want to mention in this video. But today, I think it is sufficient. I will deal with what course of action is available to the employee after the order is issued. Thank you. Please share this video, subscribe this video, subscribe my channel and like it to motivate me and do more fruitful job to help the department officers who are unnecessarily facing harassment at the hand of the disciplinary authorities. Thank you.